Hello everyone, welcome to another Short Fundamentals video. Going over the topic of short stories today. This topic was requested by Shin Barometric. The short story, I want to start out by making the point that short stories follow the same basic fundamental principles as a single chapter in a novel. For the most part, with just a very few differences. Basically, with short stories, let's talk about what a short story is. So a short story is going to be somewhere between, everybody has a different opinion on this, but let's say between 1,000 and 5,000 words. Pretty broad range. It's usually going to have a single scene. It's going to focus on a single conflict or plot or single event involving the main character. You're going to include a very limited cast of characters because you're not going to be able to make your short story Game of Thrones and follow the lives of 50 different characters. You just don't have enough room. So you're going to focus on potentially one character, or let's say probably less than 5 main characters overall. Of course, you could have a huge population of millions of people in your story, but you're not going to focus on more than just a few characters so that you can elaborate more on those particular characters. You usually don't want to do a lot of time skipping and things like that because you are limited on your word count. So I usually try to stick to a single point in time. Like I said, one particular scene taking place in one particular point in time. Now, as far as those fundamentals, like I said, mirroring what a novel would typically require, a chapter in a novel, you need a very strong opening. You want to do what you would do in like the first chapter of any novel. You would want to either jump straight into the action or set up the tone in as few words as possible. You don't want to go on at length about the smell of the cave or the texture of the walls, things like that. You generally want to, you can be descriptive if you want, of course. That's depending on your style. But brevity will serve you better when it comes to short stories. You don't want to spend the first 1,000 words of your short story describing the room that the character's in without mentioning what the character's like at all. You want to, of course, focus on character development. You want to limit the things you focus on to avoid the character's life history, all their traumas, everything. You want to focus on one or two main traits of the characters, what they're like. Do they have a bad temper? Are they really obsessive? You typically want to pick a couple of things to really highlight and really push through the character through the story. And another principle I usually push is you want to create the impression of this character through action and dialogue, not through describing them to the reader. This is more important in short stories than it is in novels, but this is a good teaching tool, something you can use to practice, because this is something you should probably be striving for in every form of story, short form or long form. You want to make your character's goal very clear, and of course, your character development would include communicating the character's flaws with the reader, things like that. So you want to do that, again, through actions and through dialogue. You don't want to do a lot of explaining things. The plot should be pretty clear, but it doesn't. It's sort of like a novel. It doesn't have to be a character versus another character. It can be like any other conflict, character versus nature, versus their own mind, versus technology. You do the same things you would normally do when you set up a plot of a story. So that's highlighting another of the ways that they're alike. Now, with the ending, you want to try to be as conclusive as possible. You don't really want to leave cliffhangers unless this is going to be a series of short stories. Again, this mirrors what a chapter should generally do, except for this is one of the ways that they're different. So a chapter should lead to the next chapter. If this is a standalone short story, here's where you would treat it like the last chapter of your book. The ending should be conclusive. It can be somewhat open-ended, but you don't want to just make the reader feel like they're being dropped off the face of the earth at the end. They should feel some kind of satisfaction in the conclusion, even if it's a sad ending or a bad ending. We'll say a bad ending shouldn't be bad. It should still feel like a meaningful ending to the reader. Now, some things you can do outside of just keeping the principles in mind. If you are really interested in writing a particular kind of short story, one of the best ways to get better, again, same as if you're writing a book, is to read short stories that are in the genre of the short story you're wanting to write. So if you're writing fantasy, try to read some fantasy short stories. It could be helpful to focus on fantasy short stories instead of fantasy novels, because then the differences are more clear. The translations are more one-to-one as to what you're trying to accomplish versus what you're observing. So, and then, of course, the fundamentals, as always, don't think too much about it. Don't do much planning, especially in a short story. Here's your opportunity to practice no planning at all. Just jump straight into it. Remember, you have a really broad word count to play with. So if you're aiming for 1,000 words and you end up being 5,000 words, that's no big deal. That's still well into the short story range, and some people consider short stories much bigger than that. If you hit 500 words instead of 1,000, then leave it alone. Consider it a job well done. You can say, next time I want to write a longer short story. But regardless, you finished your first short story. And just like anything in writing is an effort plagued with unfinished efforts. So you don't want to find yourself in the trap of never completing work. That's the most important first step in getting better at writing. You want to finish whatever it is you're working on. Finish your short story. If you're not happy with it, write another short story. Don't spend a year working on one short story. That's just procrastination, and it's not going to help you achieve anything. That's the main thing. Short stories mostly teach you to be concise and deliberate and focused on your story and your characters, because you have to do it quickly and you have to do it efficiently. So I think short stories are good practice for everybody. Like I said, I treat my chapters, each individual chapter, like a short story in and of itself. So I try to have strong openings. I try to have conclusive endings to each chapter. Although, like I said, with a chapter, you're leading into the next, so you're cliffhanging on purpose because the reader knows that they're about to start another story. But with short stories, that's not always the case. So you do need to be more conclusive and satisfying with the endings of your short stories. But that's it for this topic. I appreciate you guys tuning in for another fundamentals video. Hope to catch you over with my streams on Twitch. Look out for more videos. I don't release too many on YouTube, but if you'd like to request a topic, I'm always happy to entertain ideas. And I hope you guys have a good day. Good luck with your writing.